and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think where stress becomes a real threat, and when it becomes toxic, is really the way that we deal with pressure and the panic that we feel that we don't have enough time to do what we need to do, or we can't do it to the level that it should be completed. And so it's a thinking problem. It's wrong thinking, which is based upon being put in a pressure situation, or where we feel that we don't have the tools that we need, we don't have the time that we need, we don't have the skills that we need to be able to function well, and we fear what may happen if we do not succeed. So in order to prevent that kind of stress, or to minimize the stress, first very basic thing is good time management skills. Because often that sense of being under pressure is simply because we haven't managed the available time well enough and left everything to the last moment. But when we are in a situation where we do have this pressure, then it's a matter of establishing mindfulness and taking things one step at a time, doing the best we can. And when the mind starts to panic and to worry, then we simply recognize this is worry mind. And this is a phenomena that arises in our mind. And we don't grasp onto it and believe it and follow it. We don't try to get rid of it. We simply recognize, oh, this is worry mind, worry mind. So you can be friends with it, but don't be oppressed by it, don't fight with it, don't follow it, just be aware of it, and it arises and it passes away.
What is mindfulness?
What is mindfulness? This is a very complex question these days, because in the Western world, mindfulness has become the name of a number of different practices, and becomes the name of a concept which is rooted in Buddhist teaching, but in a number of cases has deviated or has changed in meaning from that which was coined by the Buddha or his great disciples. So I think with a question like, what is mindfulness, you say, well, whose mindfulness, or whose version of mindfulness? So in the Western world in particular, it's been an effort to separate mindfulness from the Buddhist tradition and create something called secular mindfulness, like non-religious or non-Buddhist mindfulness. And there are a number of advantages to that. One is that people from other religious traditions will feel that they can develop mindfulness without having to worry that it's taking on teachings of another religion. Makes it more accessible. But the danger is that taking mindfulness out of its context within the Eightfold Path, then it can change into something rather different from the Buddha was teaching, and maybe not so useful. So in the Buddhist version of mindfulness, then mindfulness is one of a number of allied and mental states which work together on the path of Dhamma, the particular function of mindfulness is to hold something in mind, or to keep something in mind. So you could be mindful of a precept. So you go into an area where there are many mosquitoes, and so you're mindful of the first precept, not to kill mosquitoes. You have mind. This is your object of mindfulness, is the first precept. In the case where you are, in the case of meditation, then you would be mindful of the breath, for instance, if you're practicing breath meditation, but you're also mindful of the teachings and mindful of the traps to avoid, for instance. So you're holding in your mind, you're not forgetting that which you need to make use of in that situation. So one definition of mindfulness is not forgetting. And so if you consider the virtue which is very closely related to mindfulness, is sampajanya, is a clear comprehension. Then clear comprehension is the kind of the wisdom side, which is not being deluded by experience, keeping on track, knowing your goals and whether or not what you're doing is in harmony with your goals. So, for instance, if you're meditating on your breath, you're being mindful of your breath, trying not to forget your breath, but then you lose your mindfulness, then after a while you suddenly realize, oh, I'm thinking about this, thinking about that. And that is clear comprehension. That is sampajanya. And then you make the effort to return to the breath. And that's what we call atapi. So in Buddhism, we don't ever talk about virtues as isolated mental factors, but we always understand them in terms of the context or the matrix in which they are developed. So in the secular mindfulness, then it's the emphasis is in being aware in the present moment of whatever's happening without reacting to it with like or dislike. So you can see there's some slight difference there. But with the whole context of mindfulness in the Eightfold Path or the secular mindfulness, it's ever the central point is to be in the present moment, awake and aware in the present moment, and to take responsibility for your actions. So that might be a little bit technical or difficult, but this question about what is mindfulness becomes more complicated as the years go by.
Can meditation be practiced in daily life?
Again, we have this problem of definition of terms and what we mean by meditation. In the Buddhist time, the word generally used is bhavana, which means mental cultivation. So cultivation of wholesome mental states. So in the sitting and walking practices, we try to minimize or to eliminate all disturbing as many disturbing factors as we can, so that we can develop an intensity of focus, which is not usually possible in daily life. But in daily life we have the same challenges as in the formal meditation practice. That is to say, the challenge to prevent defilements or negative mental states from entering our mind, the challenge to deal effectively with negative mental states that have arisen, to introduce into the mind positive mental states that have not yet arisen, and to take care of and to further develop positive mental states